Thank you for tuning in to Terry Swoop Videos. On today's video, I'm going to talk about what happened to the singer and dancer Jermaine Stewart. Now, Jermaine Stewart is mostly known for that hit song that he came out, "You Don't Have to Take Our Clothes Off." This was a huge hit worldwide throughout the 1980s. Now, he was mostly famous for this song, but he actually started off as a Soul Train dancer in the 1970s. Now, his beginning starts in Columbus, Ohio. He was born in 1957 in Columbus, Ohio. His family moved to Chicago in 1972. Now, Chicago was the birthplace of Soul Train. Soul Train started out in Chicago, and he started dancing on the show with his friend Jody Watley. Jody Watley is the person that got him his spot on Soul Train. And he was really a great dancer. He was an amazing dancer. And he danced on Soul Train throughout the 1970s. And in 1977, they were looking for a lead singer for Shalamore. Jody Watley joined the group as a background singer, and they were looking for a lead singer. So he auditioned for the lead singer role. He ended up not getting the part, but he ended up touring with Shalamore as a background dancer. He toured with Shalamore throughout the late 70s, early 80s. In 1983, he ends up getting his own record deal, and he releases his own solo album. His first album was called The Word Is Out. He had moderate success with his first album, but his biggest success came in 1986 when he released the album Romantic. And that's when he released the single, "You Don't Have to Take My Clothes Off, We'll Have a Good Time." Oh yeah, that was a huge hit. It was the number one song in Europe. It was the number one song in America. It was the number one song everywhere. A lot of people always label Jermaine as a one-hit wonder, but he had other hit songs besides "We Don't Have to Take Our Clothes Off." The same year that that song came out, he released the song Jody. Jody made the top 40 on the Hot 100 Billboard charts. And then in 1987, he releases the song Say It Again. That was a huge hit song that sold over 500,000 copies. So he had other hit songs besides that one song. But because that song was so popular, because "We Don't Have to Take Our Clothes Off" was such a popular, globally successful song, people think he only had that one hit song. But if you look back on his entire career, he had other hit songs besides that one song. Now, I think one of the things that really hurt his career is he started coming out about his sexuality. And as you all know, in the 1980s, society back then wasn't as accepting to homosexuals. And he started promoting the LGBT community. And a lot of the black radio stations stopped playing his music. Because in the black community in the 80s, it was a lot of homophobia back then. So a lot of the radio stations stopped playing his music. And this really hurt his sales. And this is one of the reasons why George Michael hid his sexuality for as long as he did. Because he didn't want it to hurt his career. It wasn't until the 1990s that George Michael started coming out about being gay. And Jermaine Stewart came out around 1986, 87. That's when he started being open about his sexuality. And most people in the record business rejected him. And this really hurt his career. Now, nowadays, the music industry, the entertainment industry is more accepting to gays. If he was a singer nowadays, it wouldn't be a big deal. But back then, it was a completely different society 30 years ago. than it is today. So his career started going downhill. When he releases his last album in 1992, the record company refuses to release his album. And he ends up losing all his money. All the money that he made during the 1980s, all that money was gone by the 1990s. So he ends up being infected by HIV. What's really sad about Jermaine's death is that when he dies, his family doesn't give him a funeral, and they don't give him a tombstone. I think some people in his family may have resented him because he was gay, and this is the reason why he didn't get a tombstone and he didn't get a funeral. It took 17 years after his death for his mother to put a tombstone over his grave. That's ridiculous. Now, all the money that he made throughout the 80s, all that money was gone by the 90s. So he died broke. And because he died broke, his family didn't give him a funeral. And it's really sad to see him go out like that. I think he's one of the most unsung singers in the history of music, because he was a very talented artist, very great dancer. But because he was gay, a lot of people resented him because of this. And like I said, today's culture is completely different. I think he would be more successful today than he was back then. Because in the 80s, being a black man in the 80s that's gay, that had to have been really hard for him. But nowadays, it's more accepting. So I think if he was alive today, if he was a singer today, he would have much more success. His career would have lasted a lot longer today than it did back then. And they also have better medicines to prevent AIDS nowadays. AIDS today is not a killer the way it was 20, 30 years ago. Nowadays, when somebody gets AIDS, all they have to do is take their medication, and it's not going to affect them at all. You look at Magic Johnson, for example. Magic Johnson has had AIDS for the last 30 years, and he's perfectly healthy. Because they have medications now that stop the disease from progressing. And these medications almost make it seem like you don't even have the disease. So I think his life would be a lot better in today's society than it was 20 years ago, 30 years ago. But he was a great, talented artist. I'm sad to see him go out like that. A lot of people have different opinions about this topic. Leave a comment, rate, and subscribe.